What's up, War Room? Connor here on the Badlands feed, of course, after wrapping up Senior Bowl week in Mobile, Alabama. I am now in Las Vegas for Super Bowl week, but we weren't going to leave Mobile without some thoughts on the players on the field, how it can affect the Jets draft, and of course, some actual Jets coaching staff thoughts as well. Reminder, if you're watching the clip on YouTube, it is just a clip. For all of our full content, go to Badlands on Patreon, where a special shout out to our War Room subscribers. If you're watching there, you'll get all 5 thoughts. So, leaving Mobile, Alabama, wrote down 5 different things here, and let's jump right into it. Number one, watching the offensive line every single day. Obviously, a lot of the talk in this draft has been around, especially for the Jets, with a 10th round pick, around whether it's Joe Alt, the tackle from Notre Dame, whether it's Talisa Fuaga, the offensive tackle, right tackle from Oregon State, and of course, Olu Fashanu, the left tackle from Penn State, and a lot of other different players, whether it could be J.C. Latham from Alabama, Tyler Guyton, who I'll get into in just a second, was also on the practice field in Mobile, the right tackle from Oklahoma. But I think the interior offensive line class in this draft does not get enough love. And I think that was fully on display during Senior Bowl practices. And if you're looking at the Jets situation, right? What do we talk about literally every single week? It's how do you remake or retool? And I think it's a remake. Retool would be maybe 1 or 2 new starters. Remake, I'm thinking you're looking at 3 plus. It's a remake for the Jets situation without a second round pick. Yes, you have cap space or can manipulate the cap and create more cap space. But at the end of the day, how many average to above average starters not only hit free agency from the offensive line, because obviously teams do not often let those guys go, but can you actually land? And during this tenure, this regime for the Jets, they thought they were getting one of those guys in Laken Tomlinson. It hasn't worked out. His future is a very curious situation to me, but obviously one of the more creative answers, and it's not the easiest because they haven't had success rate doing this, is finding starters outside the first 2 rounds. Now, of course, they're expecting with the 10th overall pick or wherever they pick in the first round, depending on potential trades, a starter at tackle. But when you look at the second round, they lost that pick, of course, with the Aaron Rodgers trade. You look at the third round, well, it makes it that much more vital. And you might be sitting there and going, okay, what are the strategies that you can take? Well, for the Jets, I think one big topic that we don't know the answer to, and quite frankly, they might not have it written in ink, it could be more in pencil, is what is the long-term future for Joe Tippmann? And with Joe Tippmann, he was a center in college. For the Jets last year, he played both guard and center. I thought he looked comfortable at guard. And it's a matter of how do the Jets project him long term? Or do they take the route, and this is where the Senior Bowl roster comes in, that when they get to draft night, say they sit in the third round there, they go, okay, we really like a guard that's on the board. Tippmann's going to be our long term center. We really like a center on the board. Tippmann's going to be a long term guard. And a lot of this can change, of course, after free agency as well, because the Jets can go out and do you sign a center like Lloyd Cushenberry? Do you go out and get a guard like Andrews Pate, like Robert Hunt from the Miami Dolphins? And there's a longer list that we actually are going to go through, or you might have already listened to it, the full Badlands podcast, of course, when we go through some free agents for the offensive line. So the name from me from the Senior Bowl that really stuck out is Christian Haynes, the mostly right guard from UConn. I think he has center flexibility, but he had a phenomenal week. Now, what you have to realize with Haynes, he comes into this event as a projected day 3 pick, and I think closer to the 5th round. Honestly, and I'm talking about every single player at the event, he was the most consistent performer at the Senior Bowl. Now, think about what that means. Consistent does not mean that he had the highest high points or lowest low points. He was just rock solid throughout every single rep of the week. It felt like he didn't really lose a lot of reps, or really any reps for that matter. He plays with a lot of fire. He got into some tussles, but I thought he was very clean, level headed. And when I say clean, I mean technically sound. He knows how to use his hands. Haynes is somebody that comes from a program in UConn that has not had a ton of success and could have made him a little bit, underappreciated throughout his time there, where he's played a ton of snaps since, I believe, 2019 now. So he's been on the college football field for a very, very long time and logged a ton of snaps on the interior of the offensive line. Kind of a unique body, a more compact guy. He's about 6'2". He is a heavier guy, so a lot of weight packed in there, but he moves really, really well. And honestly, just that anchor strength and the hand placement And what he does on tape that we didn't really get to see a ton of it in Mobile, obviously throughout the one-on-ones, because that's not what they're asked to do. But on tape, you see him execute on the move as a run blocker as well. So now when you look at Haynes, I think there's maybe some overreaction here. I've noticed. I think he came into the event as a projected 5th-round pick. Now a lot of people will be talking about him as a top 50 to 60 pick. I think it's more likely that Haynes is projected for the 3rd round. Now, does he make it to the Jets is another question, but he would be a perfect selection for them in the 3rd round, where you keep Tippmann at center or a free agent signing. Obviously, Haynes is a guy that I think is going to play guard at the next level with center flexibility. My second thought, looking at the 1st round, what if the Jets are actually able to trade back this year? And is it something they should consider when you look at how the tackles could come off the board? The reality is for the Jets, 4 of the tackles could come off the board. Now, not all 4, but 4 are potential top 9 picks. And what I mean by that is Joe Alt probably expected to go before the Jets pick. Olu Fashanu, I would call that a coin flip right now. Taliza Fuaga, I would call that about a 65% chance he makes it to the Jets at 10. And then you look at J.C. Latham, more likely that he's a top 20 pick rather than a top 10 pick, but grades are all over the place, and Latham does have some really big grades from teams across the league that nothing should surprise you. So my point is here, it's not that the Jets could be sitting at 10 and 4 tackles went in front of them. My point is that it's a very interesting situation like 2020 where we don't know who's going to be gone. And that year, the Jets didn't know either. And when Tristan Wirfs and Mekhi Becton were left on the board, obviously, this is not something you want to relive, but it felt like a situation that it was surprising Wirfs was there. They opted for more upside with Becton. Obviously, that didn't work out in the long term. And you look at Wirfs, one of the best tackles in football right now. Jets are in a situation where it feels like 2 of those guys will be available. And the way I rank them, I have Alt as the top tackle. I have Fashanu as number 2, an easy, no-brainer, top 8 pick for me. And then I have Fuaga as the 3rd guy in that list. I am not as high as Latham. I don't have him as a top 5 tackle right now. Pretty scary situation if that was the route they chose at 10. Now, when you look at the original point I want to make here, the second point related to the Senior Bowl is if the Jets do finally trade back this year, because say they want that 2nd-round pick back, or even look at the teams behind them with the Vikings, Broncos, and Raiders, right, 11, 12, and 13. Say that one of those teams wants to flip up in front of the others for a quarterback. And I know people are saying, well, who? The top 3 are going to be gone. Listen, the NFL draft gets crazy over the next couple months. Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix. You never know who can climb all the way up the board. Would the Jets get a 3rd rounder from moving back a couple spots? And then you can either use both your 3rd round picks, or you could package those 3rd round picks and come back into the 2nd round. It just, the more assets you have, the more creativity and the more pliable you could be kind of around the draft board as well. Now, your most important thought you're probably wondering is, well, the Jets trade out of 10 and move back, but they move out of range for one of Fuaga, Fashanu, obviously all expected to be gone. Who could be a little bit more of a, I don't want to say sleeper, but under the radar pick on the offensive line? Tyler Guyton